Hi, Richard. How are you? That's okay. So I'm going to try to record while students in the class, they are going to open up the computer. But we are going to do 5-1 lab today, which is not very long. Okay. So if you want, you can download the file while we wait, and we'll wait a few more minutes in case people are still getting here and getting on Zoom. Let me pin myself for everyone to see. Okay, so this is the lab we're going to be doing. We'll start in a few minutes. So I want to expand a little bit on motherboard, case, and power supply, as chapter 3 is very long. If you read the chapter, it's well over 100 something pages. Now, A+, they're going to ask you a lot of questions about connectors, about power supply, about motherboard. We spent a little bit of time looking at buses, which are the expansion buses are the slots that you can use for your adapters to be added, right? And we looked at some of the slots on our motherboard. This week, we're going to spend a little bit more time looking at connectors and drives. While these systems are not as new as you've seen at some of your home, the desktop, you can get a general idea on the type of connectors that you would be using. So we simply open the case, and then we're going to get ready. See how it's going to look on camera here. Okay. All right. Any question before we start? Some of you already got started. That's okay. Okay. So lab 5-1 is going to be on the hardware a little bit, and then 5-2 we are going to look at performance and services, which is going to be 5-2. Let me change the view and zoom in, and we'll get started. Okay, and I will try to upload the video tonight, okay? But sometimes it does take a little bit longer to convert when it goes into HD conversion, so it might be available tonight or tomorrow morning. Okay, so here's our lab. And some of you already have your computer at your desk. So we are gonna look at your power supply. And you would know that it is a power supply in that you would have these colorful wires coming from it. Every component needs some form of power, whether it's going to be through the motherboard or directly from the power supply. Okay, so for the power supply, that This is the power supply and it's installed on the case. And we would know that it is a power supply, that it would be connected, that there are colorful wire. And by just standardized rule, right? When you're looking at the wire, if they're black, that means it's ground. If they're red, that means it's positive. And power supply normally gives devices between 1 point something, 3 point something volts all the way to 12 volts to run your mechanical of your hard drive. Okay, so for the power supply, we would see that there. So in the first question, it asks you to locate the power supply, and you are going to identify the main connector to the motherboard. So I simply trace from my power supply, which is here, and I'm going to follow the line. And I don't know if you can see this, where my finger is at, right here. Okay, and that's going to be your main connector for your main board. This is going to be where it's going to provide the power for your motherboard. Okay, so the ATX, as you see in the picture, they normally would have 20 plus a 4 pin, so that's 24 pin, and they would be having the 4 pins separated like this. So you are going to look for this connector, and you can unplug it if you want to count the pins, but the standard ATX, you would see it like this, okay? So you should have, I have 2 rows, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So that gives me 24 pins. And you would see it would be either 24 pin together or 20 plus a 4 pin separated like this. Okay, so we can go here and we can say that it asks you how many pins does it have? That will be 24. And of course, each system will be a little different. Okay, so we wanted to make sure that we looked at the connector there. This one. Okay, which is the like the top picture. All right. Then you're gonna locate the fan power connection on the motherboard. How many pins is the fan header? So some of you already saw this last time, but if you look at the fan connector, there are fans either in the front of your case, the back of your case. So here is a fan. Oops, sorry. I'm trying to, where my finger is. And then what you can do is you can follow the line from the fan to the motherboard. Where my finger is. I'm trying to see. I'm not a good camcorder or recorder person. So I would see that, let me unplug it. When you unplug it, there's a clip that it should be right near, for those of you who are using the desktop at school, it should be right next to your CMOS battery. And there should be 4 pins. Okay. As you would see, that's the fan. And then you follow the cable. And then that will be the 4 pins. It should have multiple though. Okay, so there's one there. There should be another one on the other side for the front side of the. So here's another one for your heat sink, which is another fan right there. So that's also another 4 pins. So I have 2. So most of your standard motherboard, you should have about 2 or more fan connection. Okay. I see one right there. And then I see one right here. So I would have 2. So in the next one, it asks me locate the power connection for the motherboard, the fan, right? How many pins? It's actually 4 each. Those are called fan header cable. Let me highlight that in red so you can see my answer there. Okay. Is there a power connection for your video adapter? How many pins does it have? So here is my video adapter. This one has an attached or an installed video adapter. What you can do is you can look at the power connection for it. If it has its own separate power connection, it would run, we would need to run that to the power supply. Okay. On mine, it has basically a small power connection, but it's being distributed. So for the heat sink only, and it's running power from the motherboard. So no. What about yours? A 6-pin? Okay, and that depends on the type of adapter that's installed. So you can find how many pins. If it does have it, you can put a 6-pin. Or in my case, it's powered through the motherboard. So on the cheaper end of the video adapter, it will power through the motherboard.
Low end part?
Yes.
Yeah.
So on the lower, right, the lower RAM size for the VRAM, then we would use the power from the motherboard. So I would put down for mine, is there power? No. And how many pins? So I would answer, let me put this down so I can type. Video adapter uses motherboard power. Now on yours, if you have a higher end video adapter, it would use, right, its own power connection. Okay. Examine the power supply connectors. How many Molex? Right, so the Molex, I'm going to look for something like this. This is a 4-pin Molex. This is used for the older hard drive and the CD and the DVD-ROM or the optical drives. So on the SATA, it would look like this. It looks like a large L shape. Okay, so for me, if you guys look, you can pull the zip tie up. And you can see that there are, I have a P7 right here. Okay. I also have additional SATA connection. So I have one Molex. I also have a P9 and a P7. Usually they're labeled. So the Molex is P7 on mine. And then I have a P9. Okay, and then I have a SATA. Now, if we count the one that's also up front, I also have another SATA here. And I think I only have one Molex. Yep. So count up the Molex. So I only have one Molex, which is this one right here. Now on the newer power supply, you're gonna see that. Now all power supply, you know, even newer power supply, you're gonna see more Molex in case we use legacy device. And then for the SATA, you're gonna look for the L shape. They're like that. Or let me see if I can pull this up. They're like that. Okay, so I have 1, 2, sorry, for the front. So I have 2, 3, 4. I have 4 SATA. So I have one here. I have one here. I have 2, 3 here. So 1, 2, 3. And then, yeah. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 4 total. So normally you would see at least 4, depending on the board, on the ATX. It's so dusty. My hands are so dusty. Ew. We'll wash it after. All right. Now, some old power supply, you should also have a floppy connection. And I saw the P9 there. So the floppy connection. So the floppy connection would look like this. You see? It has like 3 pins and it should have a clip. I'm sorry, 4 pins and it should have a clip. Now, if you don't have that, that's okay. You can put none. Let me see if that's right. Nope. Yeah, that is it. So no floppy. Floppy is old, right? We don't use floppy anymore. It's unreliable, but you need to know what floppy connector looks like. See how the picture is? Okay, so I have 0, none. Okay, so then we need to identify the location of our P4. So when you go up, right, you would see the P4 and it would be 4 pin. And that's going to be for your main board. Okay, this right here is used to distribute to all the components, where this right here is used to distribute power to the board itself. So your P4, if you look, let me find it on this one. Where is it? I just saw it. It's right here. Excuse me. There's my P4, and you can just describe it like mid, top left, or you know, in the middle, or top right, or next to. I would say it's right next to your CPU socket or your heatsink, right? So I have one right here. Okay. So then we would say next to CPU socket or heatsink. You can say the left of it or the right of it, whatnot. The whole point is I want you to know where the location is, so in case you need to look for it, you know where. Okay, then next we're gonna look at the power supply sticker, okay, which is located on the power supply itself. We wanted to see the rated wattage. And sometime if you don't have the rated wattage on there, you can look at the manufacturer website. So it tells me that the input is 100 to 227 volts, which is 78 amps. And the hertz, the frequency on it is 50 to 60 hertz. This is branded from Light On. They make a lot of different electronics, right? I know yours might be a little different. Okay. And then it would tell you also the wattage. On yours, what did you guys have? 475 volts. 475. Anybody else have different? So yes, that will be the standard. On average, you would have 450, 400, or 475. It depends on the type of hardware. So we wanted to add up all the devices to be the base level on this, right? So you would record the wattage that you would have on your sticker. Now, if you have a gaming system, you would see that we want to use 650 or more, depending on if you have, you know, video adapter, different type of drives, different devices that you need to add on, and then also your motherboard would use, and your CPU on average, that will be about 95 watts, right? Some CPU would be about 70. It depends on, and also your RAM would require some wattage there. Anybody else have any different, any higher ones? How much? 280? Minimal. That's okay. So I would put down on your, okay, we can say that, or we also have 475 watts. It's a different mix of system. So you can, the point is that you would refer to the sticker. So if I need to upgrade this on yours 280, I can go with the 350, which costs very minimal right now, right? Like about $35 or something like that. Okay. So here is where you would go, your power supply calculator. I want to show you this. So if you're building a gaming system, you can go to the expert, but if you want the very basic at the minimal is where you click basic tab. Okay, and then you can choose. I'm just going to use desktop. And then my processor, right? If you recall, let's say that we do a quad core, and then you can instant search the CPU. Let's say I use like an Intel. Now, if you want to use this particular processor, you can. You have to open it up and see what it is. But let's just do an estimate. Let's see what kind of Intel it has in here. Some older stuff. Well, let's do like a Pentium, something like that, 4. And then the memory, we probably have about 2 sticks of 4 gigs. And if you're not sure, look at the sticker on it. It will say. And then the video card, I have an AMD or an NVIDIA. Let's do an AMD. That's a cheaper one. And then put in the brand for your video adapter. Storage, I only have 1 hard drive. So that one is a SATA 5400. So when it's lower RPM, it's going to be less power compared to a higher RPM 7200. Also, sometimes you do have higher RPM, but if they design the circuit board, which is the blue board or the green board underneath, that uses less. So if you're using SATA, you would see that it would have a SATA cable like this, and this is my drive, right? It would be a power next to it, which is colorful wire, and then the data, which is flat. It's either blue, black, red, another color. Okay. So I would go ahead and select this. Let's say that we use 8 hours a day for our job, no gaming, and we would calculate it. So if I'm running this CPU, let's bring it down a little bit. Let's recalculate. Okay. My load wattage would be at least 506, and I'm going to have an overhead of 556. So you want to go about 50 to 60 watts, a little bit above your base. Okay. So I want to show you this in case that if you're looking to upgrade your power supply or replace it. So a sign of your power supply going dead is when it reboots and it doesn't stay on right away. And that could also be a heat issue, but power supply, when it's not able to supply, to the motherboard, nothing, you can't stay on the system very long. Okay, so it tells me here that I need to go with about 556. Now, can we slim it down? Sure, but you don't want to be a little short on your wattage. Okay, so once you have the calculation, is the amount of wattage. So let's say that if mine was 475, which is what it says, or 460 actually, is that enough, right? Is it adequate? It will be base use, right? So we wanted to go a little bit above. It's recommended that I would go with 550 watts. And we're not selecting the exact device as it doesn't have it in that list. This is not the only website. There are many other websites that you can use. Okay? It's recommended. Okay. Then let's say that I want to replace it with the 550 watts. I would then go to my browser and then I would put in 550 watts power supply. Now people are particular to certain brand, right? Some brand they like, but in general you want it something that's gonna last you a while. So I can go for something that will be affordable. Okay. And I don't need to go above too much. So if I say I can go with a 550 with Supernova, it's $119, or I can go with the lower grade with this, right? Kosher is good. I like them. I like Thermaltake and other brand too. All depends. So I can do this one, and you want it rated, okay? Don't get the one that's non-rated. Okay, so this one is okay. I can do a 550 watts, bronze certified for $45. So I can just obtain this information and the price, and then I put it in here. And you don't have to select that one. You can find another one of your choice. And the price is $45 before tax and shipping. Assuming that I don't have Prime from Amazon there.
Or online?
So find one online that will fit to your recommended spec. Okay. Any question?
It's there. Huh? Oh yeah, sure.
Or if you want another one, right? You can go back to your Google Shopping or shopping website. Newegg is about the same. Here's a Cooler Max. Also 550. So on average, you're gonna see them going for about $45, 40 bucks. You can find them on sale for $30 there for this one. This one's all right. This is the hydrodynamic. So you want silent bearing because after a while, you're gonna hear it buzzing, right? And that can get annoying. But sometimes ambient noise, you get used to it. So you want something that has the silent bearing for the dynamic. That's the fan mechanism right here. Okay. And then so it needs 12 volts. So just average rule of thumb is that, you know, the mechanism for your power supply is going to be about 12 positive volts to drive that. Okay. Any question? And then people sometimes they care about the cable color. I don't. Most of them are black anyway, so. But you want the silent bearing so it's quiet. Okay, so your choice. All right. Next, we're going to talk about storage drive. So I put the picture here in case you're not sure what they are. Okay. So with SATA connection, it's going to look like the L shape here. And then usually you would have a power cable and a data cable. all of them would have that. This is a hard disk drive. And these are, they are pullable, so you don't have to disconnect them. You can see right here. This is my drive. And then I have an optical drive at the top, which is for CD and DVD. And they would use the same type of connection. So I would have power, data, but on the optical drive, we also need to plug in sound. Otherwise, you can't hear anything when you watch DVD, Blu-ray, or so on the optical drive, there's a third cable for sound. And that sound cable is going to connect to the motherboard. Okay. So rule of thumb, power for all your devices, data for all your storage drive or your optical drive. Okay. Then we can pull out the drive through the clip. These drives are designed to have the clip right here. You can take them out and take a look. If you want to disconnect the cable, you can. Sorry, let me adjust my camera. Back a little bit. Okay. Now on the sticker of the drive, you're gonna see the drive detail. So you will have Western Digital or Seagate or whatnot. Okay. And the connectors, you would see that they're L-shaped for SATA, and the SATA 3 is the standard right now. So you pull the clip by pressing down the side, and almost all business systems, you would be able to pull it out this way. Sometimes you would see the CPU socket is in the way, right? Or you have cramped space, you just gotta work around that. Okay. But we don't have to take it out all the way. We just need to take a look at the sticker. But if you need to replace this, right, you gotta make sure that you are able to navigate around. What I see here is, see how it's hitting this. So you have to take this out and then to be able to remove this. Or you can remove the drive bay. Okay, so let's take a look. I have a Western Digital. It's a caviar blue. That's your optical at the top, and then your storage drive is here. Okay, so if you're looking at the sticker, it will be here. What's your RPM on that? 7,200 or 5,400? Oh, you don't have one? We'll just use one. Oh, that 5,400 RPM? You can use their spec or mine. So I have a 225. How many drives is in the system, right? We have one optical and one hard disk drive. And your home, you might have a solid state drive too. It might go to the M.2 or a hybrid where it would be connecting to SATA. Okay. That total of 2 drives. The type of drives that are connected, I already set that, one optical. And my optical is a DVD. And is it a read-write? Oh, yep, an RW. And in the textbook, it talks about different type of read-write for DVD. Even though optical disc is obsolete, you might still have to fix them. So making sure that you know the difference. A+ will ask you still on some of the optical type. And then I have a one hard disk drive That's a Western Digital. That's just a brand. And then how many cables are connected to the drive? I have one power and one data, SATA. And if on the SATA cable, it'll tell you what kind of SATA it is. And then on this one, it should say SATA 3 or SATA 2, or, you know, also the brand. So SATA 3. If you have an older system, likely it'll be SATA 2. So the transfer rate is different. Okay, so SATA stands for serial ATA. It replaces the flat ribbon, which is IDE, right? The older drives. The capacity, I have a 250. But some of yours is like 120 or 150. It all depends. Even though they're the same brand system, you know, there have been drives that have been replaced. I know, I think yours, I think somebody took it out and never put it back. So.
You think?
No, it's probably one of the faculty that did that. Not me. All right. HDD RPM, we can go with 5400 RPM. Sometime you would see 7200 RPM. Or higher. Usually it's about those for average. How many SATA port are available on the motherboard? So you can simply trace. So here's one that's going to be, so it would be all together there. You see? I have one for the hard drive. I have another one here too. That's the header for my motherboard for the SATA header. 3, 4. So this one has 4. You just count up the port. It looks like a small L shape. Okay, go to where your hard drive is connected and you will find it. So I can say that this has 4. Now some motherboard would have 6 or more. That's okay, right? That is just a bigger board or can expand it. What is your recommendation for your system storage upgrade? So if I need to replace this drive, I can go with a higher capacity, like half of a gig or 1 terabyte. Okay. And then I can go with a higher RPM. So let's take a look at what's available on the internet. Okay. Since we're on Newegg, we can say 1 TB. Or we can go solid state if your motherboard has solid state. This one doesn't. So hard disk drive. And they're fairly cheap. So I can go with the 7200 RPM. But you wanted the cache size to be decent. So it tells me here that it's 64 megabyte for cache. That's just used for temporary for page file. That's good. It also takes a section of this to do also a page file, but this is just for things that would regularly save a cache there. And this is a SATA 3 transfer rate, so that's a 6 gigabit per second. And this is a desktop drive, right? If you're replacing a laptop, it will be 2.5. And this is a Bear drive, so Barracuda is okay. If you want to go with a little bit more, like if I wanted to replace with the same brand, that's the WD Blue. That's what I have right now in the system. I can go a little cheaper on this. So it's $40 for a terabyte. That's super cheap. You know, I used to buy, when I first started as a technician, we replaced a 40 gig drive and it was $200 each. So, you know, drastically change in the price, right? If I go with the lower RPM, of course, I would see if this is supply and demand. So we would, but you know, you got to look at what's in it. $42. I go with the higher RPM, which is cheaper because there's more supply for it. So $40. So I can take this and then I can put it into my recommendation. So you can look at same brand, just bigger capacity, right? So I went with the higher RPM. I went with the higher storage capacity. And you want to keep the same brand in case of support reasons, that's fine too. Right? Some people prefer a certain brand. All right, so that's what I got. Any question? Okay, we still got a little bit more time. We just got to finish the last few. I forgot to bring you guys ruler. Sorry, I meant to do that, and then today got kind of crazy. So I wanted to use this. I know I used this in the lecture last time in the recorded video, but I want to show you the difference. So what you see, form factor refers to the size of your motherboard. And for your standard ATX, it's 12-inch by about 10-inch. Think of it like it's bigger than your sheet of paper that you use to print your standard. That's a little bit bigger, right? Because that's 8 by 11 is your standard paper size. So it's about an inch longer and an inch wider, or 2 inches wider for the standard ATX. Then if you get the square, that's gonna be your micro ATX. It's 10 by 10, about a little bit under 10 by 10. And then the mini ITX, this is what you see with a lot of SAN storage that people buy, or the smaller computer that they sell really cheap for like $200. It's 7 by 7. Okay, so when we look at this, you can also count the expansion ports, the extension slots. If you have about 7 expansion slots, like for your video adapter, that's an ATX. If you have 4 expansion slots that's a micro ATX. If you have 1 expansion slot, only 1 slot to add, that's a mini ITX. On the old ITX, they actually locate the socket diagonally. It's a little bit different than the new model, but anyway, so here, if you count up the expansion slot, if it's about 7, then you have an ATX because it's roomy, right? 4 for the other one. So I have a square, so I have a micro ATX. I know most of you do, right? You have a full?
Yeah.
I have a mini, a micro. So check your size. If it's rectangular, it's ATX. If it's a square, it's micro ATX. I usually buy micro ATX because I like my case a little roomy. I buy a full tower, but I use smaller. I just like things, I can add things to the case, to like additional fans and things like that. But the good thing about the ATX is that, first, the cooling environment, because when you have a bunch of expansion slots together, you don't want it to be cramped in. So it has more cooling capability. So what happens is your air is going to pull in from the right side, right? Because as it enters the front of your case, it's going to hit your RAM first. And then it's going to get to the left, which is your socket right here, which is going to also have a heat sink where it's going to take that and it's going to send the heat out. Then some of your cold air is going to come in on this side. It's going to pull it down here, right? So you can cool your expansion slot, your RAM first, because those runs really hot, and then your processor has a fan on it. Now, if you're using water cool, it's going to do the same thing. It's still going to pull some cold air in from the fan, and then it's going to run that air through the pipe that has liquid, which cools it down tremendously, and then it's going to send the colder air to the rest of the components. Okay, and that's how it works. All right, so to answer this, right, how many slots? I have 1, 2, 3, 4. So I can count 1 here And then below that, so I actually have 4 total. Okay, so those are just the add-on adapters type. So. Okay, so A+ are going to ask you about the Southbridge and the Northbridge, right? On traditional, so what I did was I took a picture from the internet so I can show you. This is a similar motherboard, right? It's just turned horizontally compared to the other picture. So your Northbridge is here. Your Northbridge is always going to be closer to your processor. Its job, you know what its job is? Who knows what a Northbridge does? You can pass the A+. So each of these chips are in charge of certain things. Anything that pertains to the system like RAM and socket, that's the job of the Northbridge. The Southbridge is in charge of all the expansion buses. Okay, it's able to use, so this chip is the Southbridge. Its job is to be in charge of these right here, right? Your buses, your PCI, your PCI Express, the expansion slots. The Northbridge is for system control, which is going to be your RAM and your socket. Okay, and that's how your motherboard works. It's just a group of chips that's in charge of different things, including power and storage. Okay, so describe the location of the Northbridge. Your Northbridge is always going to be closer near, I want to say adjacent to socket and RAM. And then Southbridge is near expansion slots. And you always remember that because that's the job, right? Their job is to be in charge of those things so they're nearby it. Okay. So how do you know where your Northbridge and your Southbridge is? Can you find it on your motherboard? There's a heat sink on one of them. Okay. So your Northbridge, there's a heat sink next to, sorry, let me adjust my camera. Back a little bit. I had it at a perfect angle earlier. Okay, can everybody see that? It is this one right here. Okay, and then there's a Southbridge on this one. It is this one right here. They have heat sink on top of them. Southbridge, Northbridge, next to the socket. So now you know. Okay. All right. What type of the processor does it support? So you will have to take this off, right? If you did that last time, or you can look it up. If you don't want to take it off, you can look up the model of Lenovo, and then sometime they would have a sticker on the outside. Will tell you what kind of processor it uses. This is an Intel Core V Pro. You guys, there's a sticker in the front of your case front if there is an Intel, like right here. Yeah. Yeah, it would say like V Pro or some kind, but they're specific, right? We can go a little bit further by looking up the model or take it out. So to remove this, you would have to unmount your screws for your heat sink. Okay, and then you would need to lift this up, and then there's a zip, which is a little lever. You can take that zip, you can flip it up, and then the processor will unmount. you have? Intel, it just says Intel, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, when you remove it, you would just see it as Intel. Now, when you put it back, right, at home, when you do this, you want to put thermal paste on it, okay? Because once you remove it, it's no longer having that paste to cool. So thermal paste is cheap. You can find them for a few dollars, but not a lot of store carries them. So you likely have to buy them online, or you can go to Micro Center. I like Arctic Silver, but they have some generic brands that are pretty good. I used to carry some with me, but not today.
What do you think about the liquid metal?
Yeah, liquid metal is good too. So when you put it on your processor, I normally take like a piece of cardboard and I scrape it so it doesn't drip, or you just need like maybe the tip of your pinky. You don't need too much. Don't make it ooze all over your motherboard, then it'll ruin your motherboard. So you just need a little bit and then scrape it even, and then put your heatsink on top, put it all back. So they dry up every so often, so you should replace your thermal paste every few years. Okay. Okay, so I would say this is Intel V Pro inside. Okay. How many expansion slots are perpendicular or parallel to, are the expansion slot perpendicular to the processor? If you take a look at this motherboard, right? I'm talking about these expansion slots, your buses, your PCI Express, okay? And you want it to be, you want it to be perpendicular to your socket. That's the normal ATX. Okay, because that should be on the bottom, because the cool air is going to pull in, it's going to hit the RAM. The RAM is always going to be parallel with your socket. Okay, so on the ATX, the way that we design the motherboard now is RAM is parallel to the processor. Expansion buses are perpendicular to the processor for cooling reasons. Okay. So examine the computer case, use a ruler or guesstimate, right? If you have a super ultra tower, these are server cases, they come to about half of my height, which is about 3 feet. Just kidding. Yeah, about 27 inches. You can, so that's about what, 2.5 feet, right? So now they can go bigger. I've seen the XL be bigger. I have one of my former students, he actually built his computer into his closet, right? And then he like customized liquid cooling system, and there are a lot of people do that kind of stuff. You can put it into the table. So 27 inches plus is going to be a full tower. I bought a couple of those. They're kind of big and bulky if you like, but it's roomy, so you can add a lot of things to it. The regular full tower is going to be 22 to 27 inches. So that's pretty big still. And then the mid tower is 17 to 21 inches. And then the mini tower is 14 to 16 inches, right? So you already saw how big your motherboard is. My motherboard is 10 by 10 about. So a few more. So I actually have a mini tower. Okay. Yeah, some of you might have a mid tower or a full tower, depends. That one right there is a full tower on that Dell, whatever XPS, right? That one is a full tower, right? Like right below that is a mid tower, and then below that is a mini tower. Okay, and then so and then this one, we already know that our motherboard is, so I want to say mini tower. And then it tells you how many drive bay that you should have. I actually have 1, 2, 3. I have a floppy. I have a couple logical drive. I have a floppy, and then I have a hard drive. So now some of the case actually have bays right here, and they're vertically mounted instead of horizontally mounted. I like those better because it cools a little bit better because your drive bay right here is right near the fan. Okay, so some of the newer cases you see that the bays are here instead of the top because it's, you know, and then you would have access to the fan in that case. So you can count the bay. This is just a guesstimate. Sometimes you don't have the exact number there. So I have 1 HDD bay, and then I have 3 optical drive bays. Fish don't live in mineral oil anyway.
Oh, they can't?
No.
They'll die?
Yes.
Wait, what about alkaline water? That's not.
It's not good for them either. Okay.
That would be so cool if I had.
So how many drives? We already talked about the bays. So when now you know how to look for a certain type of case that will be suitable and the form factor and the things that you would use, right? To build your own computer or upgrade your own computer if you have a desktop. Now, if you have an all-in-one system, right, we can't do too much to the case or the cover of it, but we can do something else to the components like upgrading our drives and so on. All right. So once we have everything, we checked out everything, you can put the cover back or replace all the component back. Put the cover back up, make sure that they're secure. Okay, I just need to slide this back in and then put the cover back up, and then we can save our document, submit it, and we can call it a day for the lab. Pretty good, right? Not too long. Give you a little bit of hands-on.
Oh, PDF or you want it as a PDF? That's just a regular.
You guys have any questions from Zoom? Make sure we plug the data and the cable back in for the power. Don't forget. Get to wash your hands afterwards.
I know it just has a thing that the only code is pictures.
Open some snacks.
Mine has,
Sorry, more sweets today. There's some corn nuts and Chip Ahoy and Rice Krispies. All right, good. If you're finished, you can have a wonderful night. And I will try to put the video up in case you want to rewatch it. Not that I was good at recording the images. I tried. Okay. Okay, so make sure that we read the chapters. Take the quiz this week, and I will give out the prize. I gotta check who wins.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Got it first. Yep.
Oh. All right. I'm gonna stop share.
How do you know it was me?
Because I saw your name. And you tried it like the day after.
Oh yeah. As soon as
And
it
then have a
opened,
good night.
at the first attempt, I thought I was gonna miss a lot, but I only like missed one.
Oh, I missed I missed 3 because I
Thank you. Good night, Richard.
one of them was a misclick and the other 2 were actually.
Oh. That one I actually didn't know the answer, so.